Awesome. Thank you for joining us. And how about some love for our first-timers? Come on. They joined us for the first time and think this is the first day they've ever done church. No, we've actually done this once or twice before. But hey, just like all of us, we're figuring it out as we go. Right, everybody? If you did join us for the first time, you have hopped into what has been a power-packed study of the New Testament book of Ephesians. And of all the epistles written to us by the Apostle Paul, this particular one, just every single verse, so power-packed. The Apostle Paul wrote that to the new churches that were being established in the Greek city of Ephesus. And last week I introduced us to a theme that seemed to cover chapter 2 and all the way into chapter 3 of that book. And the theme is united. Because the book of Ephesians seems to emphasize this unity in diversity message, with the goal being God establishing a church composed of different people groups, such as Jews and Gentiles. His goal in that is to let the world see a glimpse of what heaven will look like. Because in God's kingdom, all people groups will be represented. And so in the book of Ephesians, we are reading about how the church had to cope with very real differences in race and in culture and in languages between the Jews and the non-Jewish Gentiles. Heaven itself, by the way, is not monochromatic. Heaven's not colorblind. There will be representatives from every people group and every race. And yet the things that we will have in common, those things far outweigh all of the differences that we come to the table with. And so last week, again, we highlighted this message of unity. And specifically, we are talking about a type of unity that does not include uniformity. You might have to help me out again on my screen today. Unity without uniformity. But today I want to take a slightly different angle, because there are some things that we all have in common. While God's not requiring uniformity, He's allowing us and challenging us to embrace His rich variety. There are some things that all people seem to have in common. So I just want to take some time today to highlight the things that you do unite us all. And it doesn't matter if you come to us from the north, if you're born in the south, moved here from the Midwest. It doesn't matter if you are rich or poor. Doesn't matter if your heritage is from Asia, Australia, Africa, Native American. There are certain things that all people have in common, traits that unite us all. For example, raise your hand if you happen to have a belly button. About 98% of you are born the normal way. One or two of you didn't put your hand up. I'm curious. There actually are, psychologists have found 7 universal facial expressions that are shared across the globe by all people. So, happiness with its laughter, surprise. See, you can read these expressions off people's faces no matter where they're from, no matter what language they speak. Other traits that are a part of the human experience. Doesn't matter where you go in the world, you will find art, drawings in caves across the globe. You will find people who make music no matter where you go. And no matter where you go in the world, the indigenous peoples of those locations, they all have some type of faith, don't they? When it comes to faith, even in our faith, there are some things that do unite all of us. There are some things that the Baptist and the Pentecostal, the Catholic, all people share in common. And Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, the Apostle Paul spends time uniting every single one of us with some spiritual truths. And so today I want to look at those unifying spiritual truths. Let's look at Ephesians chapter 2, verse 1. Once you were dead because of your disobedience and your many sins, you used to live in sin, just like the rest of the world, obeying the devil, the commander of the powers in the unseen world. Doesn't that sound warm and fuzzy to all of us? That's great. But it highlights a truth that will unify all people born in this world. And that is something to unify us. We are all born dead in sin. All of us. Now, when you look at the pastoral staff here at Thrive Church, Pastor Daniel, Pastor Aaron, Pastor Eric, they all were born into Christian families. And so they went from mama's womb to the front row of the church. Not the same day. But they grew up in a Christian household, went to church from infancy. I, on the other hand, did not grow up in a Christian household at all. There was no real spiritual environment, no church whatsoever. Yet at some point, all of us came to the exact same conclusion in our life, that we were spiritually dead because of inherited and committed sin. Now, granted, all four of us arrived at this conclusion at different times with different circumstances. We all came to the conclusion with different scars from life before Christ. But in the end, we all came to the same conclusion as all humans must. And that is, I am dead inside. And the life that I crave, it's found in one place. His name is Jesus. That is the same for all of us. So Pastor Eric came to that conclusion at 8 years old. Pastor Aaron was 10 years old. I was 20 years old. One conclusion for all humanity to come to, no matter what your family circumstances were, no matter what home you're born into, my own children will have to realize this for themselves, as all humanity will, that Acts chapter 4, verse 12 is true for them. Salvation is found in no one else and nothing else. There's no other name under heaven given to all mankind by which we must be saved. See, as we are brought into this world, you and I are born empty inside. And the life that we're craving, it's found only in Jesus. It's not found in a romantic relationship, or in power, or prestige, or possessions, although all of these things we tend to pursue to fill that void. Nothing else will fill it but Jesus. Let me read another translation of Ephesians chapter 2, verse 2, where it says in the Amplified, you are following the ways of this world in which we live, influenced by this present age, in accordance with the prince of the power of the air, Satan, the spirit who is now at work in the disobedient, the unbelieving, who fight against the purposes of God. There's another unifying factor that every single one of us born into this world have. No matter what family you're born into, it's the same for us all. And that is that we are all under the influence of this world in which we live. And you know, it sure does seem like the influence that this world is exerting on us is getting stronger and stronger with each generation. I mean, even though you might have been born into a Christian home, like my own children were, the truth is that in this world today, in our country today, our nation is more happy holidays than it is Merry Christmas. That is an ongoing progression. The influence of our culture's materialism. It's always getting more, newer, bigger. The influence of social media and all of its trappings. The influence of political agendas. And by the way, everything is political these days. All of these influences, with all the energy and force of hell itself trying to influence all of us. And will it ever get better? Well, it does say this in 1 John chapter 2, verse 16. This world, it offers only a craving for physical pleasure. It offers a craving for the things we see, everything we see, and pride in our achievements and possessions. Other translations call it the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. It's what the world offers all of us to fill the voids that all of us are born into this world with. All of humanity is looking for some form of validation and significance and meaning and ways to fix the emptiness that's inside of us all. And this comes to us inherited through Adam and Eve. We can go all the way back to the book of Genesis chapter 3. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food, lust of the flesh, pleasing to the eye, lust of the eyes, desirable for gaining wisdom, pride of life. And so she took it and she ate from it. Now, it's easy for you and I to look at Adam and Eve, and because they have names, Adam and Eve, to look at them as individuals and forget that Adam means mankind. Eve means all life. And so Adam and Eve are not just two people, they are all people. Every single one of us born since then is still under the same compulsion to fill the void with things from out there. Now back in Ephesians, the Apostle Paul, he continues and he uses these all-encompassing words to unify us all. Look at how inclusive the language is. All of us. You know what that means? All of us used to live that way, following the passionate desires, the lusts, and the inclinations of our sinful nature. By our very nature, we were subject to God's anger, just like all of us, everyone else. Couple words here that I want to take some time to dive into. Nature. It's in there twice. We're going to talk about nature. We're going to talk about lusts and thoughts for just a moment. But there is something that every single one of us has in common. Doesn't matter the color of your skin, the culture, or the century that you were born in. All of us have this sinful or broken nature. So a quick recap of this uplifting message. Welcome to Thrive. Glad you're here. We're all born dead in sin, under the influence of this world, and all of us have a nature. It is the innate natural character that all of us have that seems to be far more like Adam than it is Jesus. Adam and Eve's inherited shame than Jesus' love and security. I mean, we all want the things that we want to fill the void and the gaps. You can look at a toddler, 18 months old, no matter where you go in the globe, and you will find temper tantrums when they don't get their way. We want what we want, and temper tantrums are not associated with a race, a social class, a culture. When we as humans don't get what we want, we pitch a fit naturally. The only difference is some people have been taught how to rechannel those natural impulses. And others still throw fits 35 years later when they're in traffic on Dunlawton. Honk! Get out of my way! People are people. And now remember those 7 universal expressions that we can read on any human life form anywhere in the globe? Laughter, surprise. Well, there are some very dark emotions, such as anger, contempt towards another, disgust. We can see these on people's faces, no matter where they are in the globe. What that means is, no matter where you go, you will find hate. Hate rooted in these thoughts, inherited from Adam and Eve. Because in Genesis chapter 3, what we see is that at the moment they pursued that from the outside to fill something inside of them, their eyes were open and they felt shame. You know what shame feels like, right, everybody? At their nakedness, their brokenness. So they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves because of fear that they were naked. We're all united in the fact that all of us are born into this world, dead in sin, under the influence of this world, and ruled by these insecurities of shame and fear and brokenness handed to us, to all mankind, by Adam and Eve. Is that all the bad news you got for me, preacher? No. Because it seems that there still are a few other things that unify all of us. Ephesians chapter 2, things I said I wanted to talk about. All of us used to live that way, following the passionate desires, which are lusts, and inclinations or thoughts of our sinful nature. So let's talk about our thoughts. Our inclinations, the thoughts of the human race. I mean, don't forget, in my previous life, I was a licensed therapist. I can tell you that we as people are born with a warped way of thinking, a broken way of thinking that focuses first on self. You've seen the kids, toddlers, mine. And we have to teach them. No, the world is bigger than you. Some learn that lesson, many do not. We have this warped way of thinking whose sole focus is to fill the voids inside of us, created by nakedness and shame and fear. It's a warped way of thinking, which is why the Apostle Paul says this to you and I in Romans chapter 12. Don't conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed, be changed. How? By renewing your mind. You gotta change the way you think about everything, the Apostle Paul says. And then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, perfect will. Notice it's three things. Good, pleasing, and perfect. That's because we are overcoming three things. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. All of us have some things to overcome in the way we think, but that's not it. The other thing Paul tells us in Ephesians chapter 2, all of us used to live that way, following the passionate desires or lusts in our own heart. No matter what state you were born in, no matter what country you're from. Ephesians 2, verse 3 tells us this. All of us, we've all got lusts, and we've all got some stinking thinking. These lusts, these natural impulses and desires that are at war within our own soul. Things we want, but we really don't want. But we do, but we don't. But I kind of do. And then when we pursue them and achieve them, we find ourselves left more broken than when we started. Going all the way back to the beginning. Eve didn't want the fruit, but she did. Adam didn't want, but he did, kind of. And then there's the tactic of Satan, which is a clever and deceptive lie that they bought into. That has been his method, by the way, ever since. It worked for them. It works for you and I. A subtle and deceptive lie. The one being told currently regarding our lusts and our impulses. It's, well, if I'm born feeling this way, well then God must have made me this way, and therefore it must be his will for me. It sounds almost logical, so deceptive, so wrong. So let me clarify. There is truth that God made you and I. But it's Adam and Eve who made us this way. Whatever that way is for you. For me, I can use my words to humiliate and cut so that I can feel superior, feel better about myself. It happens so quickly, so naturally, at times even without knowing it, especially when I'm under stress. I don't want to give in to making you feel bad about yourself so that I can feel good about myself. But there is this natural impulse. And then when I give in to that, I feel worse than I did at the beginning. Can anyone identify with any of this? Ephesians 2 kicks off by leveling the playing field for all humanity. All of us, whether you were born Jew or Gentile, male or female, rich, poor, it's the same for all. Ephesians 2 levels the playing field. Doesn't matter if you vote Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, Communist, Socialist, Anarchist. It's all the same. Doesn't matter if your skin is white, red, tan, black. It doesn't matter. All of us, at our core, at our root, we're all the same. And this is it. I am a mess. All of the broken things in this world start here. Insecurity, doubt, fear, shame, impulses that rage within us that we have to fight. Sometimes we win the war, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we want to win the war, sometimes we don't want to. All of us are a mess. Is there any hope for any of us? Verse 4 begins with two words. Ephesians 2:4 says this: but God. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 4. But God. There is no hope to heal what is broken in you or I. But God. Next week, I'm going to tell you what God can do with a mess. But before we talk about what God can do with a mess, we have to first address the mess. Several weeks ago, over a month ago now, we gave people an opportunity to address the mess. We had prayer warriors line the front here. I read to you from the book of James, chapter 5. That says, if you will confess your sins one to another, you will be healed. People came forward. They confessed their mess, and they received healing. Ushers, y'all come on up. The prayer team, come on up. Y'all need to go ahead and get in place. Several of you did come forward. Many of you wanted to, but chose not to. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to give you one more opportunity to address the mess. The Bible tells us that when we confess our sins, He is faithful and just to forgive them. Now, many of us, though, because of that shame and brokenness, are able then to twist the scriptures and say, well, I don't need to confess to a person, I can confess to God. But you're leaving out what James says. No, no, no. We confess our sins to each other. He forgives them once we acknowledge I am a mess. Now, I don't recommend you acknowledging that on social media. Don't tell the world what's wrong with you, which is why we've got very specific prayer partners here for you. I don't want you to turn to your neighbor and tell them what's wrong with you. No, no, no. But if you want to address the mess, your time to do that is now. Close your eyes if you would. Bow your head. We're going to enter into a time of worship. This is your cue to come forward for prayer and not wait any longer. I love you, Thrive. Thank you.